Welcome to this online presentation of how to interpret a Minnesota criminal history record. This training is intended for decision-making personnel who grant employment or privileges to applicants who have consented to a Minnesota background check. This training demonstration has been prepared by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Training and Auditing Unit. If you have any questions concerning the presentation or interpreting the criminal history record, feel free to contact the BCA where your concerns will be forwarded to an appropriate staff member who can assist you. A criminal history record can be difficult to read if you are unfamiliar with the criminal justice system and its terms. This presentation guides you through the layout of a criminal history record, as well as exploring a criminal history record in detail, defining terms and navigating processes in hopes of aiding you in your decision-making role. Let's first review the process of requesting a background check. Once the BCA receives the required information to process a criminal history background check, they query the applicant in the criminal history system. If the applicant has a criminal history, the BCA compiles the findings and sends the results to the requester. The requester reviews the results and decides to deny or grant the privileges sought. Understanding that reviewing a background check result can be challenging, it is essential to understand the layout from a bird's eye view first, so you can see how it is organized into sections, divided by various headers. The first section displays personal identification information, such as alias names and dates of birth, scars, marks, and tattoos, and other physical descriptors. The second section is the criminal history summary. The summary provides an overview of all arrest cycles that follow, indicating open and closed cases. It also separates out adult conviction levels and juvenile adjudication levels. The next section is the criminal history details, which separate each arrest cycle. A new cycle begins each time an applicant is fingerprinted for a crime. Within each cycle, the event contains information about the booking and arrest. In addition, an event may have more than one count. Please be aware, an arrest does not imply a conviction. The next section captures court information. Court information can also have multiple counts. A court cycle may include sentencing information, conditions, and custody information. The last section identifies holds, which means the applicant is booked into and held at a facility but was not charged with a new crime. The applicant may have resided at a facility due to a transport or another jurisdiction's warrant. Each time a crime is committed, a subject may be arrested, booked into jail, fingerprinted, appear in court, and ultimately sentenced. However, an open, pending, or dismissed case may lack some of these stages. The criminal justice process is complex, offering a variety of outcomes for each arrest. Therefore, I'll provide an oversimplified arrest life cycle to help you explore the stages and its terms. Each cycle begins with a crime, followed by an arrest and a fingerprint capture. This is usually done during the booking process. Law enforcement forwards the charges to the attorney's office for review. The prosecutor reviews the case and may simply refuse to charge if the case lacks evidence. However, if they decide to charge, they will draft a complaint requiring the defendant to appear in court to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. If the defendant pleads guilty, the case is set for sentencing. If the defendant enters a plea of not guilty, there may be a series of hearings, ultimately preparing for trial. Once a trial is held, the defendant is found guilty or not guilty. If found guilty, the case is sent for sentencing. If found not guilty, the case is over. At any time during the court process, the prosecutor has the discretion to dismiss the entire case or some of the counts within. Please understand this is an oversimplified view of the basic criminal justice process in hopes of providing some foundation to what you may interpret as you review a criminal history background check. Now let's walk through the actual record to help you visualize the process and analyze concepts within this presentation. Let's assume you wanted to hire Jane Doe, who applied for a position within your organization. Prior to hiring, you require a Minnesota criminal history background check. You submit Jane's signed consent form and other necessary paperwork to the BCA for processing. The BCA completes Jane Doe's background check and mails the results back to you. Reviewing Jane's results, notice her name and date of birth are at the top of the page. She's used this name and date of birth the first time she was arrested. She may now be married using the name Jane Smith. You can see other name variations within the reported name section of the record. Her physical descriptors are located here, as well as her place of birth and citizenship. Many other data elements are included in this section, which may or may not be useful to you. As we move down to the second section of the record, we are provided an overview of Jane's criminal activity. The criminal summary is an overview of each time Jane was arrested and fingerprinted. You can see that all 3 arrests have been closed. Her highest conviction is a felony. You can also see she has a felony adjudication, which means she has juvenile cases. Let's closely examine each of the 3 cycles. Within each cycle, arrest information will be highlighted in red, and the court information is highlighted in blue to make it easier to follow along. Cycle 1 is Jane's most recent arrest, which occurred on February 19, 2018. When we examine the arrest details, we can see she was booked and fingerprinted for 1 crime, driving while impaired. The offense level was a felony. Jane appeared in court and on September 14th pled guilty. The disposition, which is the conclusion of the case, was a conviction. She was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison, and as a condition must provide a DNA sample. While reviewing a record, you must not assume a conviction if a cycle omits court information. It's essential to read all the details to ensure you're making an informed decision. The record continues to cycle 2. Jane was arrested in 2016 for a misdemeanor of domestic assault. However, if you scroll down to the court charges, you notice the court has charged out a different variation of the statute, changing the offense to domestic assault felony. Attorneys may charge out different statutes based upon the elements and evidence of the crime. On February 1st, she was convicted of the felony. She was sentenced on April 9th to serve 90 days jail. However, 75 of those days are stayed for 3 years, meaning she doesn't have to serve them unless she fails to follow the court conditions. She was also sentenced to 3 years probation. More importantly, notice the sentence shows the sentence was ultimately reduced to a misdemeanor. Therefore, even though she was arrested and charged with a felony, she was convicted of a felony, yet reduced during sentencing to a misdemeanor. Her fines and court conditions are listed below the sentence. Once again, it's important you are reading the entire cycle to examine the correct criteria before making your decision. The last cycle shows Jane was arrested in February 2015 for felony theft. This cycle shows that she was a juvenile at the time of arrest. If we scroll down to the outcome of the case, we can see that on April 5th, she was found to be an adjudicated delinquent. Adjudicated means she's been found guilty by a juvenile court judge of having violated the criminal law. The juvenile court does not deem this a conviction, but rather a determination of status. Once again, the sentencing conditions are outlined below, and her court conditions follow the sentencing details. Holds are the last section. It appears that Jane was held in 2018 in St. Louis County for another agency. Again, holds do not indicate new charges. Rather, the subject simply resided at a facility due to a transport or another jurisdiction's warrant. We hope this presentation provided the necessary guidance to examine a background check result and make an informed decision. However, if you have any questions concerning the presentation or interpreting the criminal history record, feel free to contact the BCA, where your concerns will be forwarded to an appropriate staff member who can assist you. Thank you for viewing the presentation.